Hello again, and third one of the night, so come on, let's get on with it. So, you'd think I'd be bored of doing this by now, wouldn't you? Nah. So, this one was a very kind donation by, very kind donation by, let's put a picture of him up, Malt and Mike, who, it has to be said, is not a fan of this whiskey, but I am maintaining an open mind, and let's see how we get on with this. And it's Tamnavulin, which is apparently Gaelic for mill on the hill, and it was built relatively recently. It's one of the younger distilleries. It's here. It was built in 1966 by Invergordon distillers, and it's actually the only distillery that's next to the River Livet. There's plenty of distilleries in what's known as the Glenlivet region, including the Glenlivet distillery, but Tamnavulin is the only one that's actually on the banks of the river itself. So this was another distillery built in the 60s to satisfy demand for blended whiskies. It was used in White Mackay blends, as well as McKinley and Crawford's as well. And in 1993, White Mackay actually bought the distillery themselves. However, in 1985, then they mothballed it, and it stayed mothballed until, and in that interim time, White Mackay themselves were kind of transferred, changed names, then became White Mackay again, and it was a real kind of like messy time for White Mackay as a company. And then they were eventually bought by a brand called, I think it's United Spirits, who are based over in India. And I think that was like 2006, 2007, and Tamnavulin was reopened in 2007. So it was then sort of relaunched. Now they hadn't actually done any bottlings, but they were kind of pushing White Mackay. So they reopened Tamnavulin to supply more whiskies for the brands that they were like, right, we've got White Mackay, we're the new owners, we're going to push White Mackay, we're going to really go for it as a brand, so we need the supply of the whiskies to back it up. And then in this year, in fact, to celebrate the 50th anniversary, they then relaunched Tamnavulin as a single malt, and it was known as the Double Cask, and this is what the bottle looks like. So launched this year. It's a no-age statement, so it's bourbon matured, or with American new oak matured, and then finished off in sherry casks, hence Double Cask. One of those slightly annoying terminologies where double cask and people go, oh, it's a double malt as opposed to a single malt, and this, that and the other. So it's actually for sale at the moment in Tesco's. Normally 32 quid, £10 off down to 22, which is a pretty hefty price cut. Even for Christmas, that is a pretty hefty price cut. You know, that's cheap. You know, and that really is a kind of like single malt. It's Christmas time. I want to get a present for my friend, my husband, my wife, my whiskey drinking partner, lover, associate, whatever. I don't want to spend too much. Oh, look, it's a single malt. And it's 22 quid. Oh, I'll get a bottle of that. So they're going to sell a lot of it at this time. But I've not heard great things about this, to be perfectly honest. So I'm trying very, very hard not to have any preconceptions about this. But it's difficult, particularly having spoken to Malt and Mike about it, because he did not like this whatsoever. I will not actually read out what he's written on the label, as well as Tamnavulin NAS. But he's not a fan of NAS anyway, so that might be his preconceptions of it being a no-age statement whiskey. So let's see. So no-age statement. So it was reopened in 2007. So it was mothballed in 95 and reopened in 2007. So it's more than likely that this is stock from after 2007 when it reopened. So at its best, you're looking at a 9-year-old. At its very best, but it's probably younger than that, because I'd be surprised if there is anything prior to 1995 before it was mothballed. I'd be surprised if there is. There might be. I'm not saying there's not, but just with it being so cheap, I'd be surprised if it was. So who knows? Colouring wise, I'd be amazed if it's not a colouring added to it, because if you were working on the assumption that it's at its very oldest a 9-year-old whiskey in there, that is dark. dark. And it's kind of orangey. It's kind of an unusual darkness as well. It's like an orangey brown. So I'd be willing to bet colouring's been added to it. And on the nose, I'd say it is. And it smells a bit like beer. Right, this smells like, okay, I'm willing to bet colouring's been added to it because it's got that artificial, slightly fake edge to it, but it also smells like you've been in a pub and you've had a pint of beer, but a pint of ale, like hand-pulled, so, you know, a pint of Tetley's or Smith's on a hand-pull, and you've had that and you've drunk your pint, and then somebody's gone, do you want a shot of whiskey? And you've got your whiskey, but rather than drink it from the glass itself, you've poured it into your pint glass and you've gone, sod it. Just put a shot in that. Don't bother with a glass, just put a shot in my pint glass. And you've got that slight dregs of beer, but it's beer, it's ale, not lager. So it's got that slightly bitter, hoppy aroma to it. And it's got a bit of that. It really does nose like you've already drunk ale from your glass. There's a sweetness to it that's a bit cloying and a bit fake. There's a mintiness, but there's also that like green angelica, now that I remember what it's called, which is kind of jelly-like. I can't. What did green angelica? Because green angelica wasn't really minty, but it had a slight menthol character to it. It's a really weird nose. It smells of beer and pick and mix. It's odd. It really is. It's like you're in a pub and on the bar, rather than having a bowl of peanuts, they've got a bowl of like Haribo sweets that have been sat there for a while, and it's kind of like steeped in pub air. What a weird nose. I'm trying so hard to be open-minded about this, but that nose is not helping. It's weird, and I don't know if I like it because of the pick and mix sweetness. The beery element putting me off. But the sweetness to it is okay because I don't mind pick and mix smell. So it starts off, that pick and mix is actually there, kind of like jelly sweets. So fried eggs and the strawberry hearts that you get, where it's like half spongy fondant and then half jelly on top. It's that kind of sweetness, but as you swallow you get this fire. I'm gonna have to try it again just to see if it does the same thing. So it hits your Adam's apple just there, just as you swallow. It hits your Adam's apple and it goes really sharp and gets sharper. So it's like, oh, there's a bit of a burn. Oh, it's still going, and it's got hotter, and now it's gone. But it doesn't dissipate. It gets firier, and it doesn't expand. It's one little point right on your Adam's apple, which just gets hot, hot, hot. It's like a hot needle on your Adam's apple that is there for a good few seconds before it takes off. On the palate, there is this pick and mix sweetness to it. Not a great deal else. Not a lot. It really does bite at the back of your throat. There really is a bit of this needle point of burn, and it's 40% as well. But that burn at the back of the throat, and like I say, it's one precise point, suggests it's higher than that. But to be honest, outside of this jellied fruitiness, this jelly sweets, there's not a great deal. it's kind of flabby. There's sort of a maltiness, there's sort of a toffiness, there's a little bit of oak, but there's not a great deal. This is nowhere near as bad as, I don't think this is anywhere near as bad as Malt and Mike clearly thinks it's bad. And it's nowhere near as bad as some of the other reviews that I've come across recently. I've not deliberately been reading up on them, but I've kind of come across a few people mentioning it. It does still, I can still feel it at the back of my throat, weirdly. But it's not fantastic. It's very, very middle of the road. The nose is not great. The nose is not doing it any favours at all. Fortunately, the nose doesn't follow through on the palate. There is less on the palate, but that's actually a good thing, because any more of what was on the nose would not make a nice whiskey at all. It smells like a cheap whiskey. It smells cheap. Colouring's been added. It's kind of like that blended whiskey type of, there's some grain whiskey and stuff like that in it. So the palate is nowhere near as bad as the nose. The nose is not fantastic. The palate is just a bit mundane and a bit ordinary, with this weird fiery spot at the back of it. And that might just be me. Somebody else might drink this and not pick that up, but I don't think there's a lot else to pick up. It's not a fantastic whiskey, but 22 quid is about right for it, for a single malt. That's pretty much the cheapest single malt that you're going to find, and it's not awful. It's not brilliant, it's not particularly good, but it's not absolutely god awful. However, for 22 quid you can find a pretty decent blended whiskey that would arguably have more to it than this would. 32 quid is pushing it. There are definitely better whiskies for around that 30 quid mark. So yes, sorry to disappoint Malt and Mike, but I didn't think it was absolutely awful. It's not brilliant, and I'm not sure I'd go back to it. But I think if you bought it for 22 quid and you weren't buying it for Malt and Mike, you'd probably be okay. I don't think the person that you buy it for would get another bottle, but they'd probably drink it and be okay with it. They might not be thrilled, so if you're trying to impress them, you might want to look at something else. But it's something where if they drink the occasional whiskey and they're not particularly bothered what they drink, or they drink a bog standard blended whiskey and you want to give them something, a bit special, so it's 22 quid whereas they normally drink an 18 quid blended whiskey, you'd probably be alright, because the fieriness and the edginess that's on it actually isn't too far removed from a blended whiskey. So they might not go, oh, it's a single malt, it's so much better, but it's not that much different to what somebody like that is already drinking already. But not fantastic. Not fantastic, but 22 quid is about a fair price for that, which pretty much says it all. Right, that's me done for the night. I'm tired, I've got tidying up to do, and it's work tomorrow. So I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.